know Ed Clark? And who? You know, if I learned anything in the past year, I've learned that all Eagle highways lead to Ed Clark and the Wildlife Center of Virginia, because they know the good work that they're doing over there, and that he has rehabilitated more than 50,000 injured animals or orphaned wild. And he's also educated more than 150 million school children, although I think that number is probably very low. So, even though the number says he's rehabilitated 50,000, it's actually 50,003. Because the eaglets, last year's eaglets went out to him. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Ed Clark.
Picking up the bar tab. Well, since I almost always communicate with you all via computer, I'm not going to use one. And since you know me well enough that it's a little more challenging for me to BS this group than some other groups, I will also tell you that when I arrived, Jim said, well, what are you going to talk about? And he thought I was kidding when I said, I don't know yet. Well, I want you to know that this is going to be a fresh presentation. And we'll be kind of making it up as we go, because I've always found that the best way to deal with you people, other than having to drink first, is to kind of respond, to take the interest and the passion that you bring to this family, and what else can we call it, as dysfunctional as it sometimes is. You bring to this family this passion, this curiosity, this commitment, and trying to direct it is like trying to have the river flow upstream, and only the Army Corps of Engineers would try that. But trying to respond to it and guide it and channel it has proven to be, well, challenging is a word. Yes, that works. But it's also proven to be a life-changing experience for a lot of us on the receiving end of all of these accolades. And Donna was very kind in her remarks, but as I have said, every time somebody says, oh, Ed does blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, there are certain things that I do individually, but caring for now 60,000 wild animals, I don't do. I'm part of the team, but it's the people with whom I work that give their lives to deserve that credit, and I'm just here to receive it on their behalf. And that is a great honor for me. So here we are, the Eagle Festival. The first, and we don't know whether we're going to get to put annual in there or not, but we'll see. And we have the gathering of the tribe. Or a cult meeting, depending on how you want to say that. Do not drink the Kool-Aid. Just when you think you've seen it all, and you know life as it should be, duck. Because things happen. And what happened to me, well, I guess my life can sort of be divided, and that of the Wildlife Center, into two basic epochs of time. You know, we have in our calendars BC and AD, for before Christ, and Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, where we might have what we call BB and AB, before Buddy, the dark time. The time when no one knew about the Wildlife Center of Virginia, as some folks seem to think. We get these little comments about, oh, well, now the Wildlife Center of Virginia has been discovered and people are learning about your work. Well, okay. Back in the dark time, the years BB. The Wildlife Center had been around for a while, only 26 years. But, you know, we became an overnight success after 26 years of hard work, during which time we had a few significant events, such as winning the highest award for technology utilization internationally from the Smithsonian Institution and Computer World Magazine. In 2004, the Wildlife Center received the 21st Century Achievement Award in the field of energy, environment, and agriculture. We were nominated for that award by the chairman of the board of Cisco Systems, the largest networking equipment company in the world. He noticed it. I'm not doing this to get the gratuitous applause. Thank you, though. I'll raise my hand when I wish you to apply. 2007, the Wildlife Center of Virginia was recognized as the conservation organization for the entire United States by the National Wildlife Federation, where my colleague Jim Martin and I became dear friends on that board of directors, where I served 9 years and Jim served 11 years, and we got to be good friends. But the National Wildlife Federation hosts the National Conservation Award ceremony, which is held in Washington, D.C., right next door to the White House. And in 2007, the Wildlife Center of Virginia was named the Conservation Organization of the Year for the entire United States. Two of the other award winners that year were Governor Schwarzenegger from California for all of his work at the state level on climate change, and Al Gore, who had just won the Nobel Prize for his work in climate change and the publication, and actually the Academy Award for Inconvenient Truth. So those boys were in pretty good company being on the list with us. But those were the dark years when nobody knew us. And then we got a call from one of our former staff members, actually. You saw his picture up here, a guy named Jonathan Sleeman, Dr. Jonathan Sleeman. Jonathan had been the Director of Veterinary Services at the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and my dear friend Bob Duncan, who's now the Director of the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, was then Assistant Director of the department, and he called me and said, you know, we want to hire a state wildlife vet. Will you help me write a job description for the position? You know more about it than I do. And I said, okay, well now here's what you need. Here are the credentials you need. Here are the responsibilities I ought to have. And I wrote a draft job description. Well, they just used it, advertised for it, and ended up hiring our head vet. Which is living proof that no good deed goes unpunished. Well, when they got the call, at this point, we were living blissfully in our own little naive, cloistered world where all we had to deal with was terrorism and biosecurity threats and physical trauma to wildlife and, you know, all of those easy things. Well, we got a call from Jonathan saying, well, we've got this eagle chick down here in Norfolk, and he's got a big gnarly lesion on his beak, and I want to send him up to you. Fine, send him on. Little did we know. Well, it turned out that what started off as a booger on the beak of a bird, very alliterative disease, turned out to be a really bad lesion. You saw the pictures of it there, and when we did the CAT scan on that particular bird, we actually do that sort of thing in extreme cases. And now, no, we don't have a CAT scan machine at the Wildlife Center, but the Augusta Medical Center, which is the big regional hospital near us, for whom I used to be a consultant, they let us come in when they don't have someone scheduled and use their very, very sophisticated technology, like their multi-million-dollar CAT scan, and we found that as much of that lesion as was on the outside, there was that much on the inside. The entire sinus cavity of that bird's beak was just consumed with it. And it was pretty obvious. Reese's description of that is we don't know exactly what happened, and we don't, but we have a fairly high confidence level that what happened is that a mosquito bit that bird on what is called the cere. And most of you know the little ridge of its nose, the soft tissue pad between where the feathers start and the hard chitinous beak begins. It's the growth plate. It's like the quick on your fingernail. The part from which the nail grows, and in that case, the part from which the beak grows. The mosquito undoubtedly bit it, and the germ passed because it was so late in the year. Reese told the story of the first 4 eggs going away from accident, from intrusion, from whatever, and this was the 5th egg, late in the season, end of April hatching. So at that point, the mosquitoes were out. When eagles normally hatch, it's cool enough that the mosquitoes are not out and active, and the birds have a chance to develop an immune system. And they develop that by being exposed to these pathogens in the environment, and the parents coming in and bringing dirty food from the environment that the birds can eat and be exposed to, and that's the way it works. But this bird was so young at a time when these mosquitoes were out. We believe that that's the scenario, but again, it's speculation, but highly probable. Ordinarily, in a case like that, it's almost certain that we would have euthanized the bird, because we treat avian pox regularly. We treat it with human drugs. Interferon, the drug that was developed to boost the immunity in AIDS patients, $438 per vial. Guess you're wondering how I know that. We don't buy a lot of medicine that expensive, so it stands out in one's memory, especially when you're buying it vial after vial after vial. Now, part of the story of Buddy's early years, or the early days with us, didn't get told, or at least not unless you've heard us kind of off the record about the day that surgery was done. We knew we had to, we could remove the outside part of the lesion. That was no big deal. The inside part, inside the bird's skull, is not something we normally do, and we knew that we had a little extra pressure on us. Because in addition to getting this tiny little buzzball eagle, 75,000 of his friends came along. All of whom had very strong opinions about how we should care for the bird. Half of whom called us and sent us emails with those opinions. And it was quite a time, you know. I mean, half of them were saying, "Oh, thank you for caring for the bird." Some were saying, "If anything happens to that bird, I'm coming down there."